academia and the pharmaceutical sector. So, ma'am, I will be handing over the host to Mrs. Angana. She will be taking you further, and I hope you enjoy the session with us.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you, Aruna. Good evening, ma'am. Here we are all waiting actually to hear your journey, and also we have a lot of budding researchers who are like, even people are at a very nascent stage of research. Maybe people are thinking to start their research journey. So we really also want to get the insights of this research, publications, getting the patents, and also the possibility and scope of it.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you so much. I think what better than a Saturday morning evening spending with young researchers and who have the curiosity to learn more about research and patents. So I take this opportunity to thank Professor Venkatesh, who also is my colleague at my institution, SIS School of Business Studies, to invite me. Yeah, Venkatesh?
I'm a student here.
Yeah, student. Yeah. Eager and curious and forever learning student. Yeah. So whatever little that I know about patents, I would surely like to share the idea about intellectual property and the power that the intellectual property has in the current times. Right. So I'll share my screen. Yeah. Is the presentation visible to everyone?
Yes, ma'am, it's visible.
Yeah, ma'am, it's visible.
Yep. Yeah. So we will try to, in this brief time that we have today with us, so we'll try to look at the how the patents have entirely changed the world of research today, and how important are these currently in the current perspective when the economies have become globalized, right? So we all understand that patents is nothing but a form of intellectual property rights, right? So I understand that the audience understands what exactly is IP and IPR. Am I right? If the host can inform me slightly about that.
Ma'am, it would be great like if you give us some insights about what IP exactly is.
Okay, fair enough. So, intellectual property and intellectual property rights, these are two terminologies used for creation of the human mind, right? Whatever innovations that basically come up in the laboratory, right? So we protect that innovation, that creation through certain intellectual property rights, which assign the owners the right to that innovation so that there is no imitation and they can have return on the investments that they have made so far in developing that innovation, right? And particularly when we are talking about the IPR, patents essentially take the center stage, right? Because every day, if you see whatever products that we're using in our daily lives, right? Be it a product or it's a process like a machine or anything else that essentially could be used is as a result of certain technical innovation which has been made, and all the technical aspects behind developing that product essentially are protected through patents, right? And that is why you see more of emphasis being given to patents these days. Otherwise, there are other forms of IP too, like your trademarks, which are nothing but the brand names which the organizations own and which hold a lot of equity, right? And also copyrights, which basically are given to the artistic and literary and the other forms of creative work, right? But today my focus will be solely on patents, right? How essentially the patents are add value to the area of research. Now, just to give you a brief about what exactly is a patent. Patent is nothing but a right which is an exclusive right, right? When I say exclusive right, that means whosoever is the patentee, whosoever has the rights to the innovation, essentially can make or exploit the invention in any of the forms, right? Whether it is manufacturing the innovation or making use of the innovation, any form, or either the sell the innovation or offering to sale. When I say offering to sale, I'm talking about licensing opportunities. I'm talking about assignments, assigning rights to third party. So today, let's say I am an inventor, I am an academician, I may have no intention to commercialize the invention, right? So what do? So I have to filing a patent. So essentially, I can go ahead with tech transfer to a company who may be engaged or who may be interested in bringing the product to the market, for whom the product is being made. So I can assign the rights to a company who can finally bring in the product to the market, or else I can license it out to a third party and still withdraw, get royalties from the sales, right? And also importation of the patented product. So let's say I have a patent in India, and I also file a patent in US, where I am granted a patent in US. So it's not necessary that I need to manufacture the product at both these two locations, right? I may manufacture the product at one location and export the product to another geography, right? So let's say I am an Indian national, I manufacture the product in India. Since I also have a product patent for the product in US, I can export the product very well from India to US and assign rights to a third party to import the product on my behalf, or else I can start my own subsidiary who does so on my behalf, right? So importation is also a very, very important right, which essentially a patentee can have as far as the product rights are concerned. And this was one of the most latest rights which were added in the year 2005. However, rest of the rights, making, using, selling, offering to sale, they have been there in our Indian Patent Act since the inception, that is 1970. Other than that, a patent also has a limited term. So if you want to patent an innovation, you also must keep in mind that the term of the innovation is not forever. It is going to be for a period of 20 years. After that, the patent ceases to exist. So anyone can make use of the patent, exploit the patent, and produce the product and sell it in the market, right? And lastly, another important point about the patents is that any patent is a territorial right. What does it mean? That if I apply for a patent in India and somebody tries to copy or make use of any of these rights which belong to me otherwise, and utilizes any of these rights, I have the right to sue the person, right? However, I cannot sue any person who's situated in United States of America if I do not have a patent right in US. For that, I will have to file a patent in US too. So it is a territorial right for every geography, wherever you want to secure your right. If you want to protect your product from any form of imitation that may happen at any of the markets, you will have to file your patents in those respective markets. So there is no concept of as such any global patent or a worldwide patent, right? Am I clear with this point?
Yeah, ma'am.
So yeah. So moving further, since I understand that majority of the audience is comprising of young researchers, at this juncture, I felt that it is very important for any young researcher to understand the journey what they're embarking, right? Now, the research journey can either end up in a research paper, okay, or the final goal may be to compile or research the findings into a research paper, or else into a patent. But the point of advice which I want to make at this point of time is that this decision making, where most of us are faulting, that this decision making, that whether you want to finally write a research paper or whether you want to obtain a patent, this decision making has to be done very much in the beginning. The reason being, although you can see in the slide that majority of the elements which comprise a patent specification and a research paper, they are more or so the same, right? However, in order to differentiate between the two, the point that I'm trying to make here is that research paper is basically a kind of a discussion on the research work that you have done, right? However, when it comes to patents is a step towards commercialization of the product, and therefore it must comprise an element of novelty. It must not be obvious to someone who's skilled in the art, and also it must have an industrial application. So what I mean to say, that in research work that you are essentially doing may not have all the essential elements which may be required in order to compile a patent specification vis-a-vis a research paper. So let's say if your target is a research paper versus a patent, you must keep in mind that the novelty aspect, something which is non-obvious to someone who's skilled in the art, and something which is an industrial application is a must if I want my research finally to be patented. Now, the next part of my this presentation basically talks about how to identify your invention. Now, this is where also many of us go wrong, right? I mean, if you're an inventor or if you're an entrepreneur, yes, I think it is easier for you to identify what exactly is the innovation, right? Because there you may have conceptualized it right from the beginning. But what I mean to say is that sometimes when we miss out on the actual innovation, and we are not able to kind of file a patent on the requisite aspects, which are, or we may call it as the actual functionality of a product, which is the useful feature or the unique feature which differentiates our product from the rest of the competitors. There we go wrong. And that is why even though we may have filed a patent, because we've not been able to identify our product correctly, we may falter around this particular absent and this particular point. And that is why the your invention, as it is mentioned here, could be as a result of fundamental research or improvement and of existing art, or you are solving some unsolved problems, or it could be a different approach. So let's say there's a technology already available to produce a particular product. You may look at an alternative technology to produce the same product in a more resource efficient manner. That, of course, is an innovation, right? However, you must identify your invention correctly and thereby, protect it accordingly. Now, identifying an innovation, again, for a young researcher, I just want to tell you one more thing, because people may think that it may require a flash of genius or, something very, very innovative in order to come out with an innovation. Let me tell you very frankly, majority of the patents which have been granted to the technologies which are available in the market, they are not a result of some breakthrough research. They are simply incremental innovations which people have made on the existing piece of art, right? So essentially, people have identified those small changes which have basically created value for the customer and thereby brought in those products in the market. I mean, just give you one example which I normally give in my class, how people how researchers have been able to kind of identify the innovation. There's a very popular case study about how the Velcro industries was established. There was a Swiss researcher named George D. Mestral who used to take his dog for a walk to a mountain every day. And every time they would come back from the mountain, there were small seeds which were stuck on the fur of the dog and his own clothes. So when he closely looked at those seeds, he found that those seeds had small hooks on the surfaces which were resulting in their sticking to the surfaces, right? And that is how the concept of a fastener came to his mind. And further, his studies, which almost went on to a period of 8 years or so, he studied that when nylon fiber is sewn under the impact of IR waves, that is infrared light, they will form strong hooks on the surface, similar to the natural hooks which were found on the surface of the bird. And further, he worked with a weaver from the textile industry and could figure out, he could develop two nylon strips. On one side of the strips, the natural hooks of the bird were mimicked, and the other side, the soft hooks were mimicked. And when you stick the two together, the bonds which were formed were very strong. However, they could be separated by applying the force. And that is how the Velcro was worn and the entire industry essentially was created. So what I mean to say, your observation is very important while you are basically trying to give rise to, or maybe thinking of conceptualizing a product for the customer. And this is something about, how exactly just a patent application looks like, because for any researcher, it must be very important for them to identify and understand what exactly is the patent specification. So this is a brief description of a specification, although the specification varies from country to country. Although the basic format includes an abstract, which is a short summary of the invention, followed by the main portion of the document, which is written description, wherein you describe how well the invention works and what is the best possible way of exploiting the innovation, followed by the pictorial data, and lastly the claims, which are the legal boundaries based on which you exclude others to enter that particular area. Just to give you a fair enough idea as to how the claims are written. So this is a simple, very generic patent application for a product like a chair, which has a chair comprising a seat, a back support attached to the seat, support arms, and a base comprising a plurality of legs attached to the seat. So here, if you see the product here in question, although it's a two-dimensional image, you are not able to see the third leg of the chair. However, this is like a base which has 3 legs. But the point which is mentioned in the last claim says plurality of legs, wherein the exact number of the legs are not mentioned. So this is basically to exclude others. So let's say tomorrow there is a competitor who wants to come up with a chair which has 3 legs, or let's say a 4-leg chair. This exclude others from entering that space. I have kept the example very generic so that it is understandable by everyone. So this is how the claims are written in order to exclude any further innovations which may essentially be a direct competition for your product. So now I will try to kind of take you through the journey of a patentee through the patent application, how exactly you go about doing it. So when you have decided, when you are very clear about what exactly you are trying to do, so you first, as I have mentioned, you have decided upon the idea or the invention, or what exactly is the problem statement on which you would like to work, which could be a process, or a machine, or a manufacturing method, or a composition of some matter. So when you've decided upon that, one of the most important things which I started my presentation with was to depict and to decide certain aspects about your innovation, whether your innovation is novel, whether it is non-obvious, or whether it is useful to anyone or not. So when I say novel, novelty is an aspect which is quite subjective in nature. Like, for example, something which may be novel for you may not be novel for anyone else, or maybe to me or to anyone else, right? So what exactly, how does the patent office decide what exactly is novelty? So novelty is any aspect wherein there is no written and oral description being made about the invention, what you're talking about in the patent specification. So let's say if you are working on a research project, right? So many of you may be working on a research project. So if you want to go ahead and file a patent for your innovation, make sure you do not do an oral or a written description. When I say written description for a research, it could be even submission of thesis. That is a written description of the invention that you're working on, right? Or it could be your synopsis presentation, right? It could also be a presentation made at a coveted symposium, right? All these acts lead to spoiling the novelty of your invention, right? So this is a very, very common mistake which people do before filing the patent application, wherein they make oral or written description of or they publish their research findings in journals. And we all understand that particularly in the scientific arena, there is a lot of focus on first to publish, right? There is a lot of, there is an ideology which says publish or perish. Because of which people in a rush to publish their findings before even, let's say, for a PhD student who's doing his PhD or her PhD, they may be in a rush to publish their findings. However, if you want to commercialize your invention, make sure even before you publish your findings or even before you submit your thesis, make sure you file at least your provisional specification with the patent office, and then do the submission of thesis or publication of research papers, right? So novelty basically with regards to public disclosure of the invention, which must not be done before the filing of the patent. Now, the next condition is non-obvious. Non-obvious means something which is not obvious to a person who is skilled in the art. Now, that is a specialist in your area. It should not be obvious to a specialist in the area. If it is obvious to a specialist in your area, that means it does not meet the criteria for patentability. Now, again, herein, I would like to make a very important point is that the invention need not be very, very complex, and the inventor need not be genius in order to meet this criteria, right? A simple solution to an existing problem can also provide you that non-obvious or tick mark that particular requirement for inventiveness or the non-obviousness, right? So for example, it could be a established technique for ages, right? For years this technique was there, but nobody thought of using it in a different way, right? So contribution or utilization of this established technique to use in a different way is the inventive step. I don't know whether all of you are aware of the MacBook Pro with the touch bar. You guys are aware of this?
Yeah, ma'am, we have did see that.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
so if you see the MacBook Pro with touch bar, if you look at the novelty element, the novelty and the non-obvious element came through the touch bar, right? But if you look at the rest of the MacBook, many of the features were the same. Rather, I should say unchanged. But the touch bar contributed to that novelty aspect which I'm talking about, right? So even a small piece of innovation, essentially, if you improvise on the functionality of the product in any possible way. So let's say for a food product, which is focused on a pediatric or a geriatric population, that is for small children and for adult, for even old patients, you come out with a product which is easier to digest. So there you improvised on the functionality of the product. A product disposal mechanism, let's say, for example, you came up with a product which can now be disposed in a more responsible manner. There comes the inventive step. Am I clear with this point about novel and non-obvious?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So something which is inventive essentially should add some knowledge to the existing stock of knowledge. That's the point, okay? And that is what it says. It should not be obvious to a person or to a specialist who is in the area. So let's say it could be like, for example, if you are from the area of engineering, so a mechanical engineer, let's say, so it should not be obvious to a mechanical engineer the type of innovation that you came up with. And lastly, the third criteria is the usefulness, which is talking about the industry. An industry should be capable of producing the invention. Now, this is also a very, very important aspect. It basically focuses on the fact that any patent is basically for a technical, it is a technical solution for a technical problem and should be capable of being manufactured by any industry. So this particular condition was added to kind of differentiate between inventions and discoveries. We all understand what is an invention and what is a discovery. So essentially, invention has a technical solution for a technical problem and can be exploited by an industry. However, discoveries are just statement of natural phenomenon. They essentially cannot be technically produced by any industry, right? So inventions and discoveries basically they differentiate with one another because of this last condition. So why I'm mentioning this point, because discoveries are revolutionary sometimes and they give radical approach to the complete system. However, they cannot be essentially produced by or exploited by any industry. So essentially, it needs to be converted into a product. The discovery or the basic principle must be utilized to develop a product which can be prepared and exploited by any particular industry. So now the journey when you start as a researcher to start with any research work for that matter, not only for research paper, but also for patent, everyone basically does some literature review. So this is what is referred to as a prior art search in case of patents. Okay, so prior art basically looks at all printed publications, patents which may have earlier been granted before you apply for your patent for the invention that you're working on. Okay, and for that there are many public databases available like PatentScope, Google Patents, and so on and so forth, where you can basically check what all earlier patents have been granted in this particular respective area, in which area you are working particularly. Now, this is a step which purposefully I have added uh, from my end in order to complete the entire patent journey, is presenting your idea, but at the same time maintaining the confidentiality. Sometimes what happens is, when you are thinking of any particular area, it is always good to present it to cross-functional teams, get value in terms of the comments that you receive from different teams. However, my suggestion, please sign any confidentiality agreements prior to sharing your idea or presenting an idea with cross-functional teams, right? So this is something, this I call it as championing your idea and getting a 360-degree feedback, because you need your idea to be ripened enough in order to go ahead and file your patent. The third stage of your, once you have decided upon, this is my idea, it does meet the criteria for patentability and it does have the potential to be filed as a patent, then it's time now for you to draft the application. Now, when it comes to drafting your application, there is not much hue and cry. There is a lot of, there are many consulting firms that do the job for you. Okay. However, as a researcher, you must be clear about your options that are available as far as the Indian Patent Office is concerned. So for an Indian applicant, the Indian Patent Office gives you two opportunities. One is in terms of provisional specification and the other one is complete specification. So let's say you are in a state of urgency. You want to submit your thesis, or if the product is in the launch phase, or there is a pre-launch, or there is some commercial disclosure which is just nearby. So you may be in a state of urgency, so but still some work may be pending to develop your product. So at that time, you can immediately go ahead and file the provisional specification with the patent office. The idea is to grab the earliest possible date of filing, because for many products, the first mover's advantage in the market counts, right? So in such cases, provisional specification must be filed. And I am a personal fan of this provisional specification, but again, with a point of caution here, that only when it is done right. Sometimes what happens is that either when it is not done properly, then it can go catastrophically wrong, because then it shows it to the patent office that either you are not in possession of the invention, or your invention has not ripened past the stage of idea. It was just an idea. You made an hurry to, file a patent application. So the material aspects of the invention were not disclosed. The point what I want to make here is that only when the invention has matured to a stage where you know how exactly the invention works, you can go ahead, and still some work is pending, you can go ahead and grab the provisional specification, grab the first possible filing date. And later on, within a month or 12 months, you can go ahead and file it the complete specification. So these are some of the benefits which are available to Indian applicants. So even with some pending work, you can still go ahead and file your provisional specification, but it needs to be backed up with a complete specification within a year. So these are some of the questions which I have basically included for all the researchers who've joined today. So these are the questions which you need to ask to yourself when you are basically compiling an application. This helps you to basically, negate later on those many questions which basically are raised by the patent offices, which later on become a hurdle for you in your patent journey. So you must ask these very important questions, like whether you are in the possession of the claimed invention, whether anybody who's having an ordinary skill in the art can make use of the invention and replicate it, right? That means if whatever specification and the processes and the methods that you have compiled in the application, if anyone else who's skilled in the same area reads your specification, can they replicate the same? If yes, then it is good to go. If not, you need to relook at it. Okay. And similarly, what is the best method of carrying out this invention? That is the best possible method of exploiting it. Now, Is there any public disclosure? You need to see that. Now herein, public disclosure not necessarily means your own oral and written description. Okay, it also means similar inventions which may be available in the same area. Okay, and how similar are they? Because they can be a big threat to you and your application, right? And whether your invention meets the area of patentability, that is the criteria which I meant: novelty, non-obviousness, and the industrial application. So these are some pointers for a researcher to figure out before you head even to meet the attorney to prosecute your application in any country. So after you have drafted, of course, the last and final stage comes to the filing of the application, wherein some administrative requirements are included in my forthcoming slides. So some of these slides are talking about, the forms and some other documental proof which are required. So these are some application forms which are form number 1 and 2, which are already available on the Indian patent website, and some other statements and undertakings regarding your foreign filing. If you've made any foreign filing, if you've made any patents, filed any patents in other markets, you need to disclose it at the time of filing in India, right? Who is the rightful owner of the invention? Sometimes the inventors are not the owners of the invention. Reason being, it is because of the kind of let's say the agreements that the employees have with their employers. So sometimes the employers are the rightful owners. So inventor essentially may not be the owner of the invention, right? So, and then also declaration regarding inventorship, who are the inventors. Some certified copies are required in other languages too, right? And these are some of the other listings which are required specifically for biopharmaceutical type of applications. Any specific ancillary sequence data, I think this will make sense to someone who is basically from biopharmaceuticals or biologics or biopharma degree, who has a background in these areas. Now, once an application is filed with the patent office, it is examined. Now, the examiner basically exactly do the same things which we also do at the beginning of our research journey. So they also do a prior art search to see how many such research papers are there which are a close match to our patent application, which are the other similar patents which have been filed in the area. And they also essentially look at the patentability criteria, whether looking at the prior art which is available, right? So whether our patent application is patentable or not. Okay, sometimes they require your face-to-face meetings also. Okay, sometimes you may request, if required, because you want to explain your point. Okay, and sometimes they are requested from the patent office side also. Now, the office essentially can take any stand on this. Either there can be objection on certain claims because they may be already claimed in some other specifications. So you should be ready to drop certain claims if required to. So sometimes they will say, please drop these claim number 15 to 18 because they are infringing upon the rights of some other application. You may also face rejection, and let me tell you, rejection is a very, very normal process. So if you are, if you want to get into the patent journey and want to have a patent for your invention, make sure you should be ready for rejections, right? Because it's a very, and rather I would say, they basically give you the basic understanding about what exactly went wrong and where you exactly need to work further and improvise your invention, right? Sometimes these oppositions and objections, they give you that food for thought for working for your further research processes. And I think in my every class I give the classic case of Wright brothers, who got the patent from the US Patent and Trademark Office for the aeroplane. Now, at the times when these people approached, the Wright brothers approached for the patent for the aeroplane, at that time the US PDA could not even imagine that a machine could fly, right? See, the aerodynamics industry was non-existing. However, they still worked on it and they proved the functionality of the product, and finally they could grab the patent. So rejections are a very, very important, and objections are a very, very important part of your process. So you need to work on them and then approach the office again and then further move towards your patent journey. So this is, I just wanted to give you a rough feedback of, rough idea about the number of rejections, number of, so let's say almost 85% of the applications which are received, they are rejected. So only it's a very small percentage of the applications which are taken up, and finally for whom the patents are granted. So even if your patent finally, after, I mean, a lot of effort and research, let's say even if your patent gets rejected, don't panic, because there is also a provision for appeal to the patent office. You can make up appeal in India if you are not satisfied with the opinions and the decisions of the controller of patents. And appeals are heard, and you can essentially still have a way forward. Now, when it comes to typical processing timeline of an application, it is shown 18 months. But however, in India, in practical scenario, it takes somewhere around 2.5 to 3 years to get a final grant of the patent. So this is the general methodology, which is the general process flow in India. You file an application, and there is a brief window which is open for rejections or oppositions. That is, anybody in between wants to oppose for the grant of your patent, they may file an opposition, and then you can apply for the examination. Now in India, examination is not automatic. You have to apply, or you have to request for the examination to the patent office. So once examined, they will issue you a first examination report, which is a sum total of their opinion on your application. And if there are any objections, you will have to meet those objections, and then only the decision is taken with regards to your patent application. And this further few slides will talk about the some of the fee which are applicable in this area. Okay. So particularly in India, the application fee is 1,600 rupees. Okay. However, there are other types of there's other costs which are involved in prosecuting a patent application, right? Because let's say if you are a researcher who may not have prior experience in the area and may be skeptical about understanding whether the criteria of my patent or my invention is novel or not, you can outsource this particularly novelty search to a third party or your attorney. So this is a cost which somewhere falls between 15 to 20,000 if you want to get this search done. But for an avid researcher who's working in the area, this I believe is a normal step or a course which you do before you basically think about any area which you basically start working on. Now, later on, compilation or drafting of your patent application, generally people take the professional help for this. And this is the rough cost, 30,000 for drafting of a patent application from any consulting firm, followed by the application fee, which is very, very less, that 1,600 rupees. And then there is immediate publication. But if you want your application to be immediately published, you can request for early publication to the patent office, for which you have to pay an additional fee of 2,500. However, examination is a procedure which is not automatic. So you will have to request for examination, for there is an additional fee, and expedited examination costs you even little more. So this is my concluding slide. So rather, this is my word of advice to all the young researchers, that the business of inventing needs to be considered a marathon, not a sprint. So make sure you take one step at a time, be patient, and I believe that things definitely work out. Don't fear rejections. The entire process is very well catered in the patent office. Even if you have objections, they give you time to respond with the objections. You can work on the objections, provide requisite documentation, supporting documentation for them, and thereby further work on. So what I mean to say is that you need to have a patience. As I said, granting of a patent, somewhere the actual process takes 2.5 to 3 years. So you need to have some patience. But then, as I said, that everything will basically make sense to you once you basically have the patent in your hand, and this feather in your cap definitely will help you. And nothing gives you more happiness than your product finally coming into a market and seeing it into a reality, right? So that is my those will be my concluding words. So with this, I would like to just give last word to all the researchers. So please keep these points in your mind when you start working on an invention. Make sure whether you are clear what exactly is the journey that you want to move ahead. Be very clear with the idea. So when, let's say, when you move ahead and go to a patent attorney, make sure you have a full hand information about, because many researchers, they are not very clear about what exactly the invention is all about. So whatever that you have, let's say you have CAD drawings, you have doodles, you have a prototype, you have detailed notes, you have videos, you have information on your competitors. Every bit of information that you have, that is the detailed information that you have for your product, please carry it along with you when you meet your attorney, so that you can describe your invention totally to them. So that the purpose of this is to basically make sure that you protect your invention in a 360-degree format, and no parts or the features of the invention are left untouched from the entire ambit of protection. So thank you so much for your patience. And these are some of my patent grants, recent grants in the year of 22 and 23. I myself do consulting, however, in the area of biopharma and biopharmaceuticals and all biotechnological based applications and solutions. And this is what my area of expertise is all about. So these and many of them basically are catering only to the healthcare. So, and if you want to get in touch with me for any of the patent queries, you can always get in touch to me at this email ID, right? Okay, thank you so much for your for your patience. And if anybody has a question, you may ask.
Yeah, ma'am, I think that was a really heavy session for everyone. All the people who are into research, even I was in research, but I didn't know so much about patent myself. Ma'am, we have actually rotated out some forms. We got some questions. So before going on with the questions, I have my own question. May I ask?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so ma'am, I wanted to know that before actually applying for patent, what is the scope of getting rejected that we should be considering? That okay, we shouldn't be doing this. This might lead to rejection, maybe some ethical laws or unethical laws. So what are those things?
Yeah, that's a very good question. In fact, in the Indian Patent Act, okay, there are, if somebody wants to have detailed information on that, the type of inventions which are considered non-patentable under the ambit of the Indian Patent Act, that is under the Section 3 and the Section 4 of the Indian Patent Act. Okay, so that basically describes certain inventions which are considered non-patentable. So if you're working around those lines, make sure you do not waste your time in getting, those type of patents with the patent applications, which, because it will take you nowhere. So patent, like for example, Section 3 talks about some innovations which are essentially contrary to public order, right? So something, a machine or a device which could be used for a theft, okay, or for a patent for a chemical which has the potential to be used as a food adulterant. Okay, so something which is contrary to public order essentially cannot be patented. Similarly, Section 4 talks about inventions related to atomic energy, because they are serious to the national security. So such kind of inventions also you cannot file as patents. So if somebody wants to have more information, there's a list of Section 3 to Section 3P, which has, and even it talks about many pharmaceutical inventions, many devices, and many other types of inventions, which are essentially, like for example, cloning. You may have heard about, one dolly sheep which had come, and even BT cotton, BT brinjals, and many other cloned versions of plants and animals.
Vegetables.
So they are also essentially the animals and the plants. They are outside the purview of the patenting. Similarly, let's say if there is a surgical method to remove, let's say, a particular tumor from a part of the body, that particular surgical method cannot be patented, right? Because if there was a patent on that method, then the methods for treatment would touch sky high prices, right? Because in that case, only few people will have access to those methods. Although surgical equipments are patentable, surgical methods are not patentable. I hope I am clear with this.
And ma'am, one more thing. You did mention about being first mover in the market for something. So let's say someone has done a patent for a product in America, Now, same product can be patented in India as well. Someone can copy, or there is some law in between that we can't actually patent the same product in the different region of the world.
Yes, of course. What happens is you can definitely now depends is who is filing the patent in India. Let's say you mentioned about a patent who's filed in US. If you let's say if you are the same applicant who wants to file the patent in India, nobody stops you from doing that. You can make multiple applications. You can decide number of markets where you want to go. You can file in 196 countries in one go. I mean, globally we have mechanisms which are called as PCT, which is called as Patent Cooperation Treaty. And one application, one language, one format, you can file your application together in 196 countries together, because those countries are party to the PCT union. So with one
Okay.
application, you can file your application, or not grab, sorry to say, but you can
Mhm.
file your application in multiple countries together, right? So nobody stops you from filing multiple patents. It is your corporate strategy, your strategic view that the organization may take and decide which are the markets which may be important, which are the customers you want to cater. These are some questions which you will ask before patenting your product in every market, because patenting in every market may not be profitable for you. The reason being, every patent which is granted by a patent office, let's say, for example, you are granted a patent in India, and this is true for other markets too, you have to pay a maintenance fee also, right?
Okay.
Maintenance
Yeah.
fee is that you have to pay, and this maintenance fee is applicable from 2 years of the grant of the patent. Okay,
Okay.
that means every after 2 years, you'll have to pay an annual maintenance fee, and there is a slab for this. So let's say from after 2 years, the slab is from 3 to 5, 6 to 8, likewise, and every slab increases. Like for the first 3 years, the cost may be 10,000, then it becomes 15,000 and 20,000. So for a company to decide which are the portfolios which they would like to invest and which are the portfolios they would like to divest, I mean, I'm talking about IP portfolio. So
Okay.
it may not be profitable for a company to have patents in multiple countries together, because it's a cost for the company, right?
Okay. So ma'am, like someone can't copy our patent and actually patent in some other country. So the same
It is.
product as us.
Of course. So let's say if somebody copies your product in another country where you have not filed a patent, the possibility and the chances are very low, because if you have already filed a patent, your patent is a part of a patent database. So when
Hmm.
I say prior art search is not only with respect to the country where you are filing a patent, it is presence or absence of the document in the database. So that means something is already there in the database. That means there is already a prior art which is there. Like, for example,
Okay.
the patent scope, the database that I'm talking about, it has more than 100 million patents, right?
Okay.
So what I mean to say is that prior art is search is done from databases, right? Not
Okay.
from the individual country specific publications which are coming up. So
Okay.
idea that the possibility that somebody will be granted for exactly identical product, the possibility is less. They will have to do some sort of changes in the functionality in order to come out with a competing product if you have not filed a patent in the other country.
Okay. So, ma'am, so we also have some questions from our participants. Okay, so I will be giving the mic to Angna, so she will be
Sure.
taking you forward with other questions. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
Angna, what is yours?
Yeah. So I guess a lot of questions we got have been covered by ma'am already, but there have been questions specifically for the pharmaceutical industry. I'll just take a few of those. One is, what do you believe will be the key drivers influencing the growth and development of the pharmaceutical sector, and how can aspiring professionals best position themselves to thrive amidst these changes?
So I believe you're talking about key drivers with respect to IP only, right? If I'm not wrong. Because since our talk is focused on patents, so I
Yeah,
would talk
yeah.
about the IP drivers. So let's say when it comes to specifically about the pharmaceutical industry, here we are talking about new drugs, okay? coming up for treatment of diseases, right? And if I have to talk specifically about Indian market, now Indian market more or so is generic oriented. I hope everybody understands what exactly is a generic drug, which is a copy of a patented drug after the patent expires, right? But what has been seen is that particularly our past experience, I mean, post COVID, people have realized that innovation somehow has taken backseat. Now, when situations like these pandemics or epidemics arise, we are in dearth of molecules or treatment options. So, innovation essentially has to be spearheaded, right? And so, I think the threat of these pandemics or any other new viral threats or microbial threats, that I believe is a key driver for the growth of the pharmaceutical industry as far as IP is concerned, because IP essentially is earmarked particularly for the protection of any innovations which come out, particularly in light of these threats, right? And secondly, also with regards to the treatment options which are available now, as you can see, people are talking about personalized medicine. Okay. So people were earlier talking about a block of population with a single drug. Now people are talking about coming up with personalized medicine for individuals. So in such a scenario, I believe IP essentially is the only way in order to protect the interests of the pharmaceutical companies and also for the growth of the industry overall. So I believe these are the two major drivers. I think the personalized medicines and the requirement and the need for the personalized medicines and the threat of any microbial threats, and IP essentially is the answer for any of these requirements which may basically come up as far as the returns on the investments of the inventors is concerned.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll just move on to the next question. So, the next question says, can you highlight some key differences between patent systems in different countries, and how do these differences impact research and innovation in general and specifically for pharmaceuticals?
Yeah, that's a very good question. In fact, I think this has been the point of debate uh, with regards to Indian industry and the big pharma from the West, because there are many IP norms in India. Although India became a member of the World Trade Organization on 1st of January 1995, and that is why all the international obligations as far as the intellectual property are concerned, that is under the TRIPS agreement, okay, the trade related aspects of intellectual property rights. So any country which is a member of WTO has to be TRIPS compliant as far as IP is concerned. Okay, so India also became fully TRIPS compliant on 1st January 2005. India being a developing country got 5 years and then additional 5 years to be completely TRIPS compliant. Okay, so from 1995 to 2005, 10 years. Okay, so 1st January 2005, India became fully TRIPS compliant. But still, there are provisions in the TRIPS which say that there are certain provisions and IP policies which the countries can have from their own side. Okay, depending upon what sort of framework is existing in those markets, what are the major challenges which are there in the market. Like, for example, when I am talking particularly in respect of pharmaceuticals, in India, when I say a novel drug, okay, so if somebody wants to, let's say there is a drug and now a pharmaceutical product, now I want to come up with a salt form of the existing drug, or an ester, or a complex, or another enantiomer, or another polymorph, or another isomer of the same drug, okay. In India, I cannot file an additional patent for these modified forms of the existing drugs. Although, if you look at markets like US and Europe, there you can file additional patents for these new forms of the existing drugs. That means if you come up with a salt form of a drug, if you come up with an isomer of the drug, if you come up with an enantiomer of the drug, or you form any complex with any other molecule, you can file patents for new molecular entities. Although the chemical entity may be the same, you can claim additional patents for new molecular entities. But in India, it is not possible. The reason being, in India being a majorly a generic industry, the generic industry is waiting for the patents to expire and launch their generic versions in the market, which are almost 1/20th the cost of the patented drugs. Now, if the pharmaceutical companies will have additional patents on these modified forms of the drugs, they will keep extending that monopoly in the market and thereby restrict the entry of generic versions. And that is why what you see is in India, we do not award such patents. And that is also one of the Section 3D in the Indian Patent Act, which says that new forms of existing substances, until and unless they are proven to be superior in terms of efficacy. So you have to demonstrate that the new molecule is highly efficient as compared to the earlier molecule, then only the patent office will think over whether to grant an additional patent for the modified form, otherwise not. So this is one key difference, and there are many other differences too. Maybe I'll share with you some literature for this, for further knowledge.
Okay. Next we have that. Okay, this is something different. This is, what advice would you give to researchers and students who are interested in pursuing a career in pharmaceutical management or patent law?
Advice is you will have to be, this is a very, very exhaustive area, okay? And you require a lot of patience in this area. So I believe anybody who's made up their minds, there are so many courses also which are available, which you can do to equip yourself with necessary skills. So you have many, let's say, for example, somebody wants to have a career in the area of patent laws and IP. There are specific PG diploma degrees which are available, being awarded by many universities. You can think of registering yourself for those type of programs. They will essentially help you in equipping you with the necessary skills, right? And which is the other degree you mentioned, patent law and
Patent law and pharmaceutical management.
yeah, pharmaceutical management. I think our own institution from where I hail offers course on pharmaceutical management and aimed at skilling the, I mean, coming up with the required skill and the human resource which is required for the pharmaceutical industry. So we have a course on pharmaceutical management and biotechnology management. So this basically produces managers for the pharmaceutical and the biotech industry, because generally, science students, particularly who are pursuing BSc and those who are doing B Pharmacy or M Pharma or MSc, they think of pursuing a career in research uh, thereafter. They're doing a PhD or MPhil or something on these lines and postdoc and so on and so forth. For those kind of students who may not be interested in, pursuing a career further in research, so I think pharmaceutical management and biotechnology management is a very good option, because both the industries are in dearth of talent, right? And pursuing these courses definitely helps you to get an opportunity to work in best of the pharma industry. And this is one industry which has always shown growth, particularly in terms of the volume, in terms of the required human resources, even during times when the global recession was on, right? So definitely this is a worthwhile industries to go and work with.
So there is another question, which is kind of similar, but with emerging trends such as personalized medicine and artificial intelligence and biotechnology shaping the future of healthcare, how do you predict the pharmaceutical industry will adapt and innovate in the coming years? And what skills do you think will be essential for newcomers to excel in this evolving landscape?
So now pharmaceutical industry, now this is a very generic question, because pharmaceutical industry now depends upon which are the areas where you see yourself in the industry. Now, if you see the pharma and the biotechnology industry, this has avenues in multiple domains, right? You have avenues in manufacturing, you have avenues towards working as a management trainee in management roles. You also have the avenues for working in research, that is R&D. You can also think of working in the areas of let's say the IP, regulatory, and then you also have the area of working specifically in the area of analytics and so on and so forth. So I believe skill sets will basically be in line with the area where exactly you want to work in future. So let's say if you are focused towards working in the area of R&D, strong basic knowledge about the area where exactly you work. I mean, basic knowledge about the pharmacology and the recent pharmacological trends. Like for example, let's say if I have to talk about new drugs and delivery systems which are coming up, essentially which are coming up. For example, IoT based dispensers, IoT based devices, AI and algorithm based devices. These are the future of the pharmaceutical industry. Even if you see, earlier clinical trials used to happen, multi-centric clinical trials used to happen. Now clinical trials are also happening remotely. Companies are organizing clinical trials by sending medicines directly at the patient's home, and there are devices which are checking all the parameters for the patients all the time, roughly round the clock. The medicines, how the patient is dispensing the medicine, that also is recorded time to time. So what I mean to say is everything is happening in a very different way. So depending upon which is the area where you want to go ahead, the skills will be exactly in line with the area where you want to work, right? Although, I mean, there's a plethora of areas. I mean, pharmaceutical industry is huge in terms of length and breadth.
As you said, like analytics you mentioned, and since we are studying data science and AI, so is it very much necessary that the person who is in analytics working in a pharmaceutical industry should mandatorily have a background in medicine or biology or something, or like they can be into data science and as they go they can gain expertise and grow there?
So again, this is a question I think which a company can, and its company policy depends on the policy of the organization. Okay, but what, as far as my understanding is concerned, it is not necessary for an individual to have a degree in biology to get into the area of analytics, right? So because you essentially are dealing with the data, okay, and you need to make sense of the data, right? So for that, if you have an understanding or you have a science degree, definitely it will be a help for you to understand. However, I don't see this as an essential criteria for the recruitment, because in our institution too, I see many students getting placed in pharmaceutical companies and in healthcare who do not have, or they may be having a degree in accounting, in finance, and later on went into analytics and so on and so forth, or having a somebody who's getting into doing HR analytics in a pharmaceutical company, right? And so on, or somebody studying market access for the company. So I think I don't see that this becoming an essential. But yes, of course, many companies may have their own criteria with regards to their recruitment. So that also needs to be looked at. So maybe I will not be the right person to answer that question. That is solely a company's call.
Okay. Next we have, how do you balance the need for innovation with legal and ethical considerations surrounding patenting in pharmaceutical research?
So as I mentioned about section 3, section 4, it talks about ethical considerations. That is, those sections are being drawn only for to create a balance, to understand what is patentable, what is not patentable. So essentially, every individual needs to have a clear check about these aspects before they even go ahead and think of filing a particular. So there are ethical considerations about, you can't have patents on methods of agriculture, you can't have patents on live animals or living organisms, and so on and so forth. So these sections are nothing but a balancing act. And also Indian government and the governments across the globe, they have come out with many provisions that basically ensure that people's health comes first, right? And patenting definitely is responsible. Somebody may think that patent is solely for monopolizing I mean, it creates monopoly in the market. Yes, it does create monopoly in the market for a period of term which is 20 years. But at the same time, we must not forget that the patent is for the benefit of the individuals, that is for the public, right? And thereby, since we've not discussed those aspects, so there are many things which the patent offices ask us to submit while we are even being granted a patent. we are being asked to submit a statement of working, which is called a statement of working. That is how much you have worked the invention to bring it to the market, wherein you also must submit data on, the number of units that are placed in the market, right? And the number of units imported in the market, that is volume and value. Why this data is being asked? This is to see that whether your invention or the patent which has been granted to you, the invention has finally benefited the people or not, right? Whether let's say there is a drug or there is a medicine which got patent, and finally the let's say it is for a treatment of a cancer, and there are number of patients for that particular cancer are 1 lakh in India. However, the number of units which are being imported in India annually are not more than 10,000 units. So that explains that there is a gap somewhere. Okay. The patent essentially has not worked in the way it was supposed to do. So these are some ethical, principles which have been drawn by the office in order to check that these monopolies should not be extended in the market until and unless they benefit someone or benefit the final individual, that is the public for whom they have been developed.
Okay, continuing this, there is this question that in your experience, what are the some most successful strategies for protecting the intellectual property in the pharmaceutical industry? Like, be it in India, be it abroad, what are the most successful strategies for it?
So pharmaceutical companies, you would say they have plethora of strategies, right? Which is called as strategic patenting, right? So they do find out many ways and means to, let's say, I'll just give you one example. There is one drug which was the blockbuster drug. Anybody has heard about Lipitor? It was the Pfizer's blockbuster drug. Okay, globally minting almost $10 billion sales. So the patent was set to expire in the year 2001. Okay. So what happens is once the patents expire and the generic versions, that is the copy versions, come into the market after the patent expire, there is a sharp decline in the revenue, okay, for the companies. So that is the period which is called as patent cliff, that is sharp decline. So imagine the company's stakes which are there with that particular molecule. So of course, the companies essentially come out with ways and means to, to protect the market protection. They try to kind of get into all sort of ways. Like one way by which they kind of still extend monopolies in the market, like pharmaceutical industry, since it was asked, is to, form licenses with other companies, or they diverse their portfolio into others. So Pfizer formed this merger acquisition of Wyeth Pharmaceutical so as to diversify into biologics, right? So this is to basically redistribute the risks that may be associated with the decline in the sales which is coming from Lipitos. So and then doing mergers, acquisitions, that is the time when you also see majority of the mergers and acquisitions happening in the pharmaceutical industry, that is during the patent expiry term period, or companies coming out with their own subsidiaries to launch their own generic versions, right? So these are ways and means by which they utilize IP policies to still maintain their monopolies in the market, and there are many others too.
Thank you, ma'am. That was great. Ma'am, I want to ask this thing. Like, this is not in the question sent, but during my period in this institution, I have been seeing a lot of people who actually think of starting a research, but the main problem they face is how to choose the topic.
Right.
So, can you give us a little bit of insight on this? Like, it will be really helpful for a lot of beginners then.
Yeah. So I think there's only one advice for this, for any researcher who wants to choose a topic. You have to do an extensive research. That is your, which is called as the prior, what you do, no, the reviews, that you study research papers. Okay. So, and you go through, in numerous articles and see what all has been done in the area, and then identify that one single problem statement, one gap in that particular area. Extensive literature survey is the only answer to that. Until and unless you have a thorough knowledge of the area, you will not be able to figure out the problem statement for your PhD, or for that matter, any research paper that you want to work or any research area want to work. So extensive literature survey is the only answer to that, right? And so that is what I said. It needs to be very, very exhaustive, and you need to be very, very thorough with your literature search. That will help you definitely with identifying the right area for research. That is the only way. So it doesn't come the easy way, what I mean to say.
I guess that answers a lot of people's doubts how to go about that.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks a lot. Anuradha, will you take over?
Yeah, yeah, thank you, ma'am. I think this was very insightful for everyone, the patent journey, and I think we would be having you back someday again, so that actually students would get into research, and then when they have a opportunity to get patent, they might seek you for help.
Sure, sure. Why not? Why not? I do consulting because you will find experts for every area. Okay, so
Yeah,
you have people working in for engineering patents, people working for chemical engineering, mechanical, and so on and so forth. And majority of the tech areas only people are
yeah,
filing patents. And I basically work for pharma and healthcare patents, both
mm,
biologics and small molecule drugs. So anybody who is interested can always get in touch with me. We can always look at the problem statement and we can advise you on how to go ahead with your patent filing and where exactly your research is lacking and where exactly you need to improvise in order to look for a patent or grab a patent. And also, if you are interested, then we can also give you a lot of advice with respect to international patent filing too.
yeah, ma'am. I think it was a wonderful session.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, Venkatesh sir, thank you for having ma'am with us, and all the participants. Thank you for being present in the meeting. I think this is the conclusion for the meet today. It was a great event, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for the
Yeah,
patient hearing.
yeah, ma'am. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. So I can log out now?
Yeah, ma'am. Sure, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.